Welcome to Bloody Besties, your true crime podcast with best friends who have known each other since elementary school. We are your hosts, forensic scientist Ruby Wild, presenting little known cases to
me, Melissa May, the daughter of police officers and true crime addict, who will be the one to bring you fun facts about our episode. So sit back, relax. Just kidding. Stay sharp, buckle up. We hope you enjoy the ride.
And we are back. Hopefully you guys are sticking with us. We do have some more growing pains. We got a couple new mics now. Hopefully this helps us just a bit. It's funny because it seems that we're always recording on rainy days.
Yeah, we got Hurricane Helen.
I don't know the name of it, but bear with us if you can hear that in the background. We can't help a hurricane. We figured it was a little bit more important to record. My topic that I gave Mel this time, she made fun of me for because I didn't know what else to call it. I just said it was trick rodeo.
Trick rodeo. I'm like, what is that? I know trick riding. And then you said
trick like roping and kind of what the rodeo clowns do.
The entertainment.
So I was like, I don't know what else to call it. It's trick rodeo. It's fine. So that was the topic for today.
Yes.
Enlighten me.
So do you know who created steer wrestling, or known as bulldogging?
No, I didn't even know that it was called bulldogging.
Yeah, it was first called bulldogging. Now we call it steer wrestling. His name is Bill Pickett. He was born in 1870 in Williamson County, Texas. He was an American rodeo cowboy who introduced bulldogging, a modern rodeo event that involves wrestling a running steer to the ground.
I mean, I've seen it happen. I don't know. I always feel bad for them. I don't know if it hurts them or not. It hurts my soul to watch that. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I love rodeo, but that one.
Well, it gets a little bit worse before it gets better.
Okay.
So Mr. Bill Pickett is half American Indian, half enslaved African American.
Okay.
So like many of the black cowboys in his time, he grew up in Texas where he learned to rope and ride as a boy. So he eventually became a ranch hand and often performed simple trick rides in town on weekends. In 1907, when he was 37 years old, which to me seems pretty old.
Yeah.
To be starting a ranch hand
that's old to start anything. I mean, as a new, not just career, but a new passion, if you will.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, he made it up until then. What year was this again?
1907.
Okay, so he's old.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 1907, he is old.
Old 37. He signed with the 101 Ranch. It was a Wild West show, and he was the star performer. Bulldogging or steer wrestling, he perfected the technique of jumping from his horse, which was running, and he'd grab the steer around the neck or his horns. And then, this is the bad part, he would sink his teeth into the animal's lip and pull it to the ground. I'm not okay with this.
No, I'm aghast and speechless. I'm just sitting here with slackjaw.
See, and I knew Bill Pickett because when I rodeoed, we'd have Bill Pickett rodeos. Yeah, it was a culture like urban rodeos.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that this was his technique until I was researching fun facts.
Wow. And you've been a part of that life your whole life. Oh, does your mom know this?
No.
She's going to learn all about this too and just be like,
Or she'll be like, oh, yeah, I knew about that.
Well, that is if she ever gets back to you from this stupid hurricane. Yeah.
Having fun in Paris and coming back to a hurricane.
Right.
Couldn't imagine what PETA would be saying these days.
How about a hell no?
If they saw that. Nowadays, the cowboys don't bite the steer. They use the momentum to twist and throw the steer to the ground. And luckily, cattle are a little bit bendy.
Yeah. And they've got some thick neck. That's for sure.
So Mr. Pickett died in April 2nd, 1932 of head injuries inflicted by a bronc at the 101 Ranch. He was 62 years old.
Ancient. In that era. Not now.
Right.
Not now.
Bill Pickett would become the first African-American cowboy to be introduced into the Cowboy Hall of Fame in 1972.
Oh, that was a long time coming.
Yeah. So that is my fun fact about rodeos, some historical stuff.
Sorry, I'm very throat cleary today because I took my inhaler before we recorded. So you're going to be hearing a lot of throat clearing. I can't help it.
Unless I cut it out.
So with that intro, we're going to jump right into 1953. And if you want to, get yourself in that era, it's when Swanson introduced the TV dinners. It reminds me of, have you ever seen Mean Girls?
I worked on it when I worked in Hollywood, but I've only seen it once, like without all the cuts.
Because there's a girl on there that's like, my dad invented the toaster strudel. And that's what this just reminded me of.
I'm picturing the little penguin and the little desserts you used to get with them.
Heck yeah.
Little TV dinners.
Oh my gosh, those brownies were to die for. Playboy magazine debuted that year. Brand new spank bank. And Dwight D. Eisenhower was sworn in as our 34th president. You're welcome for that fun fact if that's coming up on any of your tests or anything in the near future. Disney's Peter Pan premiered. And unfortunately, that's where all the good times end because we're in Wyoming and a pretty bad event happened. And it circles all around a man named Herschel Clay Tricky Rickel. From here on, I'm just going to call him Tricky. Tricky was born in, my slang came out on here. I was like, Tricky was born in December 1900 in Iowa. And 2 weeks before graduating Macedonia High School, he took off to become a cowboy. And by 1920, he was on the rodeo circuit, making his way all the way over to Wyoming. I don't know why I said all the way over. It ain't that far. I mean, a couple states, but still. At one point during his career, he was thrown from a steer and he hit his head on the fencing and lost consciousness for about 20 minutes.
That's a long time.
He was again thrown from a Brahma bull. A Brahma bull is the one that has that hump on the back, right?
Yeah, it's the breed that has the hump and they have the longer ears that kind of hang down. They're just really, they're the cuter of the bulls, I would say. Besides mine. Mine are adorable.
That's true.
Yeah, the Brahmas are the good looking bulls.
Yeah, I think The Rock just has a brand new Brahma bull, if I'm remembering correctly. I follow him on social media. So he was then thrown from a Brahma bull. He hit the fence again. This time he lost consciousness for about 30 minutes. He was thrown from a Bronco. He struck his head again. And in that case, he actually had amnesia for 3 days, but he just continued to perform.
I think he probably wasn't cut out for riding bulls and broncs. Like he should have stopped for the second time.
Well, it's funny that you say that because that's when he did change his career. But again, this is all according to Tricky. He's the one that said this. I mean, granted, other people were like, yeah, I was there when he was just down and out. But it was because of all of this that he changed directions to go to the entertainment side of rodeo because he couldn't handle many more brain injuries, I'm assuming. And that was when he started to learn trick roping and knife throwing. And that's when he earned his nickname of Tricky. Back in the day, they were known as rodeo clowns that did all this. These days, rodeo clowns to me are the ones that protect the cowboys and they jump into the barrels. They definitely, they take care of the riders from everything that I've seen. And he actually studied under the legend Lucille Mulhall, who was called the Golden Girl of the West by Theodore Roosevelt. She won a $1,000 championship in 1903. Now, $1,000 in 1903, I didn't do the conversion, but $1,000 now to me would be a shit ton of money. So
Yeah.
I could only imagine. And that title earned her the nickname of Queen of the Range. And this woman herself died in 1940 from a car accident, but she was definitely a pretty famous girl in the rodeo circuit. So now, according to Cowboy State Daily, Tricky was married in 1927, but it only lasted 4 months because it turns out they actually were never legally married because she was still technically married to her ex. Tricky found out 4 months into it that she was already married to somebody else and he basically just pieced out. But again, that was only according to that one report. I could not find any marriage records. And boy, did I try and deep dive on this boy. Sometimes marriage records from back in the day, especially if it's not a legal marriage, kind of hard to find. That's also why I couldn't find her name. Nobody had her name. But anywho, allegedly, that all happened. When the rodeo wasn't giving him any action, he became a ranch hand in Wyoming. And this is around the time that he had an altercation with a sheriff over a different woman. Tricky took a shot and missed at the sheriff. And because of that, he was sentenced to 5 to 6 years in the state pen in Rawlins. And that was for felonious assault. He only served 31 months, though, and was released in 1949. When he was released, he took a job at a lumber yard in Wheatland, and this lumber yard was owned by Charles Perry. He did good work, but apparently his behavior led coworkers. Of course, this is all after the fact. And, nobody's going to interview these coworkers before this guy did anything. But they all said that he was mentally abnormal. Quote, those are in quotes. So am I. And he was moody and would often talk to himself. Same.
At least you try to not do it in public.
I mean,
You're that aware. He was not aware, apparently.
That is true.
Yeah.
I'd hate to see what people like would describe me as after the fact. Like my coworkers have all said,
You lit up a room,
no,
right? That's what they all say.
that is what they say. But my coworkers are like, no, if you ever did anything, we'd be like, yeah, we saw that one coming. Girl was crazy. They still don't say that to my face.
I'm coming to your work and beating everybody up.
Not the light up a room type. That's fine. I don't live my life that way. So
I survived.
that's
I survived being your bestie.
that's true. While he was working in this lumber yard, he actually fell off a scaffolding one day, hit his head again, this time on a concrete floor, and he actually continued his workday. But the next day, his headache was so bad that he couldn't show up to work. He definitely got a concussion and then probably like just exacerbated things. And then just the next day, he couldn't function.
I've been there.
That's head injury number 4 now, I want to say, like major head injury. And in 1952, he met Frances Irene Williamson, and she was a widow and an operator at the Mountain View camp in Wheatland. He was able to convince her to be a part of his rodeo act. She had a job and like a magician's assistant. What he needed was somebody to throw knives at. And she agreed. She was already married twice before, and she was a little bit gun shy to give it a third go because she was 53. But according to Tricky, she did finally agree to marry him in 1953. He had been working on her, you're my assistant. I love you. Be married to me. And she's like, I'd rather not. Like, can we just keep things how they are? Apparently, according to Tricky, she agreed. Okay, I don't quite know how to put this, but she might not have wanted to settle down with Tricky because she also liked to pal around with other men.
Have you been to a rodeo and seen how cute these cowboys are?
Yes.
So you understand.
Yes. Tricky was not exactly having it, but she was like, I'd like to just continue to date you because I also have this eye candy over there.
Yeah.
So on March 1st, 1953, Tricky went to call on Frances at her apartment, but she was already entertaining another local ranch hand for the Frank Boyd Ranch, Walter Isaac Ackerblade.
And that's what we're calling it, is entertaining,
Yes,
quote unquote.
that is what.
Wink, wink.
Yes. So she was entertaining this man. He was 56. Needless to say, Tricky was not pleased, and he told Walter that he and Frances were engaged and literally threw him out of the apartment. There's that. And Walter did confirm that he said engaged. We're now on the fateful night that we are here to discuss today. It's a double homicide. So March 28th, Tricky left work at 5:30 p.m. at the lumber yard, and he went to go pick up Frances so they could drive to Lusk, and that's where her family lived, and that was so that way they could go get married. They decided to meet up at the Top Hat Bar around 6 p.m. To me, that's just funny. I'm picking you up for the wedding at a bar. Like, okay. What a way to start. Pool with my sister and everything like that. And my sister's going to kill me for saying this. But, we were all drinking, having a good time when we're in the pool. And my sister like climbed onto my husband and just started laughing. And we were like, what? And she goes, I just peed on him on his wedding day. To me, it was freaking hilarious.
Say, was he disgusted?
He just died laughing. So we've been together for so long that my sister's like his sister, like, because they've known each other since we were teenagers. But yeah, it was just so funny. That was on our wedding day. And then we were running late, and I didn't even do my hair or anything that day. My wedding was so chill. But yeah, so having a bar snack before you get married, that ain't out of the question for a girl like me.
On the nerve.
So when he arrived, though, I don't know if Frances got the memo that he was picking her up for their wedding because she was already in the company of Walter again. She was also in the company of a man named Charles Randall. So Frances started complaining to the bartender, Jerry Sparks, that she wanted Tricky thrown out because he was following her around, like basically saying, like, I came here to pick you up for our wedding and you're over here canoodling. And she was like, just throw him out. I don't want him here. And again, this is allegedly like he was picking her up to go to their wedding. Now, he also had been, he was drinking like this whole time and talking about how they were to be married. He started cussing her out. And Jerry told her basically, like, that's not how it works. I can't just throw a man out because you don't like him. you don't have that kind of pull here. So I'm just going to have a little talk with him and basically say, simmer down. Nobody wants that kind of trouble here. And you can continue to be here, but you can't keep behaving like that. Tricky, instead of behaving himself, took himself out of the bar. So that was about 5 minutes after he was talking. So we're now at about 7:30 p.m.
I would have just left and never came back. Like, she's a hoe.
I mean, yes, but maybe I'm really trying to be dainty and delicate here because, spoiler alert, she is one of the victims of this double homicide, and I don't like to speak ill of victims.
Victim shaming.
But girl had to have some sort of firecracker magic somewhere.
Punani?
Because she was getting all these people like that have no problem fighting for her. So
Yeah, she probably had herpes too.
don't do that. We don't victim shame. I know plenty of people that have herpes. Uh, so he leaves at 7:30, but he came back like 15 minutes later. So everybody's thinking that he just pretty much went outside to cool down. And I was reading this report of like what else he was doing, and 15 minutes does not seem like enough for what they said he did, which was like go pick up a paycheck, go home and have a little snack. And then he went back to the bar with his paycheck, had Jerry cash it for him, and he was using that for drink. That math ain't mathin'. But either way, he was not in the bar for 15 minutes, and then he came back. He did not cool down because he was not behaving himself again. So Jerry pretty much told him, you need to calm down and behave yourself or you got to go. 5 minutes later, he took himself out of the bar again, not to behave himself. Elmer Greenlee, I think is how you say it. He arrived at the bar. So these are all witness statements after everything that happened that I'm going to go over. Elmer arrived at the bar at about 7 p.m. and saw all the parties involved, and it did appear that Tricky was mad, not exactly getting along with anybody, including Jerry, the bartender, and he overheard Tricky tell him he would kill him, the bartender, before he could climb over the bar to throw him out. There was one time, I'm just going to go on a lot of segues on this one. That's fine because it's a short episode. But we were up in Alaska in this Alaskan bar, and I believe it might have been called the Red Onion Saloon or something like that. And it was actually a really old timey bar that used to be a brothel.
There's a Red Dog Saloon up there. I have a hot holder for.
It might be that, but
It's something.
it used to be a brothel. And the funny thing is, again, I'm going on a segue of my segue, but that's okay. You're here for it. So they used to have these dolls, like almost like the porcelain dolls. And they would be
I don't like where this is going.
No. It's quite amusing, if you will. But the dolls represented the women that were available.
Patronizing.
Yes. No.
Working.
Like I would have a doll that was pasty freckled and a redhead.
With a pinup dress on.
Yes. And yours would have a giant bubble butt.
With a cowboy hat.
When the men would go in, they would look at the dolls, and that's how they would pick who they would go be entertained by. Now, if the doll was laying down, she was otherwise occupied, and you could wait for her to be stood back up or pick somebody else. And what you would do is you would pay, and they would give you a coin, and you would go upstairs to their room, and you would hand them the coin, and that would let them know like you had already paid and that their doll was for
I like that system. That's pretty cute.
It's really adorable. I kind of loved it. And that's why I'm telling you, because it's fun. You get a fun fact from me too. And so we're in this bar. I'm never going to forget it. There was this couple sitting at a table next to my husband and I. And all of a sudden, the dude and the woman just started going, yeah. The man just turns to the side and pukes on the barroom floor.
Ew.
And the bartender, pixie little thing, like picture the size of my oldest sister. Tiny little pixie, legit, jumps over the bar, screams, not in my bar, grabs him by the shirt to chuck him out. When I'm hearing this, that Tricky's like, I'm going to kill you before you jump over the bar. I have seen a bartender jump over the bar. Literally, there ain't no killing it before it happens. Ain't no way, especially because he wasn't armed at that moment. Hope you enjoyed my little segue. The Elmer, back to him. He said that Tricky at this time, he had been drinking, but he did not appear drunk. That's kind of a key. Now, John Burke, who was another witness, he arrived at the top at 7:30 p.m. He saw Tricky walk up, put his hand on Walter's shoulder and say, quote, "You son of a bitch. I told you to stay away from her or I'll kill you." I could see that happening. It was after that that Tricky turned and walked out. That's when he was outside for about the 15 minutes. And then he came back, approached Frances when he came back in, telling her to leave Walter alone or he would kill her. This is all happening simultaneously, and everybody's kind of corroborating what I've just told you. Joseph Ferguson, he arrived at the top at about 6:45 that night. And while he was sitting at the bar, he saw Frances, who was joined by Walter about 10 minutes later. Frances was there first, then Walter came in. And then it was after that that Tricky walked in and he was glaring at Frances, obviously, because she was actually kind of ignoring him. Again, this is supposed to be the day that he picks her up to go get married to her. And she was purposefully ignoring him. He again said there were words exchanged, and eventually Joseph left the bar with Frances. So this is the guy who's talking now. He was outside with Francis, Walter, and Charles, the one that I mentioned before. And this was just before 8 p.m. They were all on the sidewalk when Tricky approached the group. So Tricky was back outside again. Remember how I said about 5 minutes after he was talked to by Jerry? He was outside. He walked up to this group of guys and Francis went up to Walter, said words that nobody could really understand what he said, but everybody could tell it was aggressive. He then turned back to Francis and said, quote, "As for you, Francis, I'm through with you." To which she replied, "Yes, and I'm darn glad of it too." To me, that sounds like a breakup.
Yeah, she probably just didn't want to be the one to do it all this whole time. And he's like, "No, we're getting married."
I could see that.
And now this is her excuse.
Yeah, I could totally see that being the case. And that was the last interaction that Joseph had before what's going to transpire. So the group walked off about a block east from Top Hat to go to Angel Cafe. But okay, I don't know if people have typos because Angel and Angle, they're like that. So some articles said Angle Cafe, some said Angel Cafe. Either way, it's named after the owner, James B. Angel or Angle. So literally it was 50-50 in all of the documents that I saw. So I'm saying both just to cover my bases. The owner, James, saw Tricky pull up in his 1937 Chevy and he entered the cafe. He was holding a 22 semi-automatic rifle. It was stored in his back seat. From what people were talking about when Tricky left the last time, he walked around the corner to get to his car. Then he took his car, parked it outside the cafe with the headlights kind of shining into the cafe. He walks in with this gun. He fired a shot at Walter, said, "God damn you, I told you I was going to get you." He shot Walter in the chest. Walter fell back into the arms of Joseph. Tricky shot him 4 more times. Now Walter's dead. He then turned the rifle to Francis, who was sitting on a stool. Think about if you see this happen, you're going to be like, "What?"
Yeah.
So before she could do anything, he shot her 4 times and she fell off the stool and died. Tricky then fled the scene in his car with his gun, and the Platte or Plate, Platte, county sheriff, they were there within 15 minutes. Small town. So it didn't take very much. They found out who their suspect was and they started popping up roadblocks between there and Lusk. They thought maybe he was still going to go to Lusk. There was a volunteer posse. There was a plane with a spotter out. Everybody was searching for this guy who just killed 2 people.
Got a plane in the 30s? What year is this again?
50s.
50s. You thinking helicopter, but no. What kind of plane do you think this is?
I don't know, but
Cessna?
I've got another segue here. Both of my biological grandfathers died independent of each other in plane crashes. And one of them was in the 60s, actually before the 60s. I think my dad was 8, had to have been the 50s. So yes, they did have them because I had a grandfather die in a plane crash in the 50s. They did have planes in these days, and that was a little Cessna. Get used to the segues. That's just what this podcast is going to have, okay? This case actually was the first APB that was sent out statewide on their new 2-way radio system. Pretty cool. Tricky was eventually found because during his escape, Tricky hit a telephone pole. The car was still mobile, so he took off driving again. He then crashed it into a ravine just south of Wheatland. He then jumped out of his car after grabbing his rifle, took off across the fields, and then he went straight into a house that was still being built by his boss, Charles Perry. So he knew this house because he worked at the lumber yard. He was building this house for his brother Willard. That's where Tricky pulled up through Sunday and Monday. And then that night, so that Monday night, this name killed me. His name's Mr. Dick Doctor.
Giggity.
I'm assuming it's what he went by.
Dick Doctor.
Yeah, he Mr. Dick Doctor. He was the project manager and he came across Tricky hiding in the house. And Tricky then said, or he asked Dick, "Did I hurt anyone?" And Dick responded, "You killed 2 people." And Tricky said, "Well, I might as well just blow my own brains out." But Dick instead talked him out of that, called Charles, and together they were able to convince him to turn himself in. He turned himself in 7:30 p.m. on March 30th. After his arrest, Tricky told anyone who would listen that he had blacked out and only came to after he was in the ditch. That's why I was saying it's kind of pertinent that everybody was like, no, he wasn't drunk. But you have to remember all the head injuries, the one that caused him amnesia. It's a 50-50 on this one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, you black out with rage.
Either way, he said that he blacked out. He said that he had talked to Frances earlier that day. She said that she would be ready to go to Lusk that night, and that's why he went to go pick her up at the Top Hat. And then when he went to pick her up at the Top Hat, she was just acting completely different.
Do you think Dr. Dick Doctor treated Tracy's boyfriends?
For the record, again, he is not a dick doctor. He is a project manager for a building company, but he did miss his calling being dick doctor. I can't get over that name. By the way, I'm not making that up. It was in 2 different articles that I read that he was Dick Doctor. And then everything else just reported Mr. Doctor. So they were like, Mr. Doctor arrived at the house. So when he arrived at Top Hat, she was acting completely different. He said that he pulled his car up outside the cafe, saw the group laughing together, and it was at that point that he blacked out. So he says from when he pulled the car up outside the cafe until when he crashed into the ravine, he was blacked out. Who knows? I don't know his brain. But Tricky actually was sent to the Wyoming State Hospital in Evanston, Wyoming for evaluation because he pled insanity. This evaluation came to the conclusion that he was insane at the time of the murder per Dr. James G. Allison and Dr. W.H. Collins. And they thought that he might suffer from something called psychomotor epilepsy. It was that caused him to not know the difference between right and wrong. Of note, however, neither actually examined him personally. They just went off the records of other people that had examined him. Now, he was taken to neurology specialist, Dr. Chester B. Powell, who said that he found no evidence of brain damage or disease and that he believed Tricky to be functional at the time of the murder. Now, Dr. James Sandall, Sandall, so Sandall, said he found no psychosis or mental deterioration. So long story short, he was found sane. 2 said insane, but they never looked at him. Brain doctor said there ain't nothing there. And then another one that did examine him as well, another doctor, said he's not insane. They decided to charge him with first-degree murder. And that's because they said that he had a cooling off period before he went to get his car to grab the gun before entering the cafe.
And that's 5 after that.
Yeah, so after he went out the last time and then even approached the group that was on the sidewalk, then from that point, he still went to his car, grabbed his gun, drove the car to the cafe, and walked into the cafe. He had plenty of time to change his mind. The jury declared him guilty of first-degree murder, but they did not add the phrase without capital punishment. And that was actually allowed in Wyoming since the law was passed in 1945. So the jury could recommend that they get life in prison instead of the death penalty. Pretty cool law. I didn't know that that existed. Because they didn't say that, he was actually sentenced to death in the gas chamber. He petitioned for a retrial in 1956. That was denied. His execution was slated for September 5th that same year. Then it got pushed to March 28th. So the year I wrote was 578. That's not the right date. So it's either 1957 or 1958. Sorry. Finally, as a last-ditch effort, his lawyer petitioned to the governor to stay his execution. And 13 hours before he was supposed to walk into the chamber, Governor Millward Simpson said, no, he's no longer sentenced to death. And that was
cutting it close.
Very much so. And the whole reason that he overturned it is because he wasn't a fan of capital punishment. Basically saying God will sort them out is kind of what his thought process was. Yeah. And so Tricky was now subject to be LWOP. I listen to Love Murder. It's another true crime podcast. So that means life without parole. And I kind of
you and your Your abbreviations get me all the time.
Well, I can't help it. I kind of love that. So he got LWAP.
Wahoo. And I'm like, nobody says that.
I do. No, Wahoo.
Wahoo. See, nobody says that.
No, they do because my coworkers, 3 of them, born and raised in this state, born and raised forevermore, they all call it Wahoo as well.
They're dumb because we know other ones that don't say that. And I've asked.
Correct, but
maybe they're northern.
No,
Southern.
one is west, one is east, and one is middle.
I hate it.
I don't care.
Doesn't even flow.
I'm still going to say it. I don't care.
Don't say it.
By the way, we're talking about Waffle House.
What?
I call it Wahoo, and it is delicious.
Not Wahoo.
It's Wahoo, whatever. So back to Tricky. He got life without parole. Of note, the governor lost his bid for re-election in 1958, and many say it's because he pardoned Tricky. I mean, I could see that being a thing. Now, Tricky was transferred to the Honor Farm in Riverton, and that's a place where inmates are allowed to work with horses. It's kind of like that whole pit bulls and parolees or whatever it's called, therapy for them, and they work with horses. He was actually gifted a Pomeranian by the prison warden, Leonard Meacham, and he was also gifted a 5-month-old colt. That's just cute. In his older years, he developed diabetes. He had a leg amputated, and he had to live the remainder of his life in a wheelchair. And then he was transferred back to the hospital, the one that evaluated him. So the one that I was talking about before, Wyoming State. That's where he died in 1981 at the age of 80.
That's a long life.
That's a very long life. It's a shame that he got to live that long and got to have his last years doing what he loved, being around horses and animals and essentially being kind of a free man after killing 2 people in a moment of jealous rage.
Yeah. Palmer got him a little bit with the amputation of the leg.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I do agree with that.
And I wonder if they could go back and do the brain scanning with our technology today and see if he actually did have trauma.
I mean, yeah, it would definitely be.
What did they have back then?
X-rays?
Interviewing? And
I don't know if they had MRIs back then or CAT scans. I don't know when those came about.
I find that hard to believe.
I do other science, not people science. My degree is in cellular and molecular biology. I don't deal with whole humans, just little pieces of them. Still, to this day, little pieces. Hopefully you enjoyed that.
Hopefully we sound better.
Yes, actually, the next episode piggybacks onto this one just a little. So stay tuned and talk to you next time.
The views and thoughts expressed in this podcast are ours alone and do not represent the thoughts or opinions of anyone else. The information presented is for general information purposes only. We are not liable for anything you do with this information.